We are live.
Okay, this meeting is now called to order, and I'd like to welcome everyone this afternoon. First item up is the approval of the agenda. Could I have someone move and someone second, please? Councillor 𝗕𝗂𝗴𝗶𝗁𝗲 and seconded by Deputy Warden Marks. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And the next item up is adoption of minutes from July the 12th, 2022. Are there any questions or concerns about the minutes? Seeing none, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor 𝗕𝗂𝗱𝗏 and seconded by Deputy Warden Marks. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Okay, I don't see any hands up. There are no delegations today, so we'll move right into briefings from our staff. So the first item up is 2022 Q3 financial results. And I'll turn this over to you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Madam Warden, through you to members of the Budget Committee. The first report before you outlines the performance of departments to the end of Q3. Q3 runs up to and includes the end of September 2022. The $1.6 million in savings is mostly related to positive performance of $892,000 across all 3 homes. This is comprised of $1 million of unbudgeted additional new funding in support of direct client care from the Ministry of Health, which was announced after the budget was struck. Offset this by $200K in additional wages to support that initiative, and a small amount of operational savings throughout the other homes areas brings us to the $892. POA revenue is lower than expected so far this year, and as a result of operational savings higher than expected due to core operations. The two offset each other, and the net result is that there is some revenue to share with our municipal partners in this quarter. The overall positive performance shown at the end of Q3 across all the departments is conservative and is expected to remain stable through to the end of the year. The Q3 departmental reports have been shared with management to assist them in their budgeting process. The recommendation before you is before you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Are there any questions for Jennifer from the committee? Go ahead, Councillor 𝗕𝗂𝗱𝗏.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Just on I appreciated the explanation of variances in that section. There are just a couple where it doesn't say there's significant savings, but it doesn't say due to. Are you, I don't know if you're able to expand on those. For example, on there's number 1, the council savings, library savings, POA savings, I think, and library. They all have some operational savings. So I was curious to understand those a bit better.
Yeah, I can expand on some of those. For library, for instance, they had significant savings on like mileage, travel, and development. There wasn't any of that happening this year. And that seems to be a trend throughout most of the departments. There isn't people going to workshops as much yet. And additionally, there was some savings in the areas of periodicals and electronic resources for the libraries. We don't know whether those will be spent by year end. They're hoping to do that, but at this point they haven't. So,
okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions or comments? Councillor 𝗕𝗂𝗏𝗏, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure who to direct this question to, so I'll throw it out there. Ambulance and emergency services. Am I wrong, or was there an announcement sometime this last summer of additional funding coming from the province for ambulance services? And if that's the case, when's it due to kick in? Is that 2023?
That's an extra $300,000.
That is our annual increase that normally comes probably around June or July. So we would have had that. We annualize it anyway, so we would have already included that in prior months, including it as expected revenue.
Okay, thank you for that.
Okay, are there any further questions or comments? Deputy Warden Marks, did you have any questions or comments?
Not at this time.
Okay. Julie, could you read the recommendation for the committee so that we can vote on it?
Certainly, if we could have Jenna, that'd be great.
Okay, thanks, Jenna.
Thank
If
you.
could- Yep,
Resolved that the report titled 2022 Quarter 3 Financial Results from the Director of Financial Services / Treasurer dated October 25th, 2022 be received and filed for information.
okay, thank you, Jenna. Someone to move and someone to second. Moved by Councillor Jiguer and seconded by Councillor 𝗕𝗂𝗂𝗁. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is 2023 budget survey results. And again, are you going to be looking after this one, Jennifer? Okay, I'll turn it over to you, please.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Through you to Budget Committee. Before you are the results of the 2023 budget survey that was posted on our website, on social media, and available in paper copies at our libraries until September 26, 2022. 394 surveys were completed and 93 submissions were paper-based. The appendix to this report provides the detailed results for all the questions, along with the individual comments from respondents for questions 20 to 26. While the responses are not considered statistically valid due to the number of responses received and the methods used to capture the responses, the survey did provide a good representation across all of our member municipalities, with a total of 17 respondents who did not live in the County of Elgin. We heard concerns raised by county residents regarding the potential for skewed data due to an email sent out from Hospice of Elgin to their subscribers with suggested responses to survey questions 21 to 26. The number of respondents that referenced hospice in their answers was 22, with 6 not residing in Elgin County. With reference to the budget tax levy, a point of clarification is required. Last year, council did agree to the targeted growth of 2% in the 10-year plan as presented. However, the tax levy increase that council agreed to was 3.6% over the 10 years and not the stated 5.48 as in the report, for a total of 5.6 annually in total. So that's a clarification. Overall, the majority of respondents want to maintain service in the areas of transportation, economic development and tourism, planning and development, public health, emergency medical services, and cultural services. Long-term care, senior services, and social services and housing were areas where respondents felt that there was a need for more investment if necessary. The majority of respondents were unsure if they received good value for their tax dollars, and when asked why they felt that way, they indicated that there was more need for enhanced transparency and that they believed that there was room for improvements through economies of scale and elimination of duplication of services, with a desire to see more tangible results. Acceptable ways to increase spending was to find efficiencies or decrease spending in other areas. When asked how this might be achieved, respondents indicated that minimal salary increases, finding efficiencies, investment in programs and services to attract business and development charges were high on their list of expected achievements. Fewer tax dollars could be spent on providing grants to community events and services and administration and leadership costs and salaries. If tax increases were necessary to maintain or increase service, 55% of respondents said acceptable increases over the 10-year plan would be 0 to 2%, with 21% indicating that 2 to 4% was the next most acceptable rate increase. Other suggestions again reference finding efficiencies, seeing more participation between tiers of municipal government, and limit spending. Last year, the Budget Committee pulled out 6 questions from the budget survey that the leadership team used to guide the development of their team's budgets. The committee is encouraged to review the questions within the report and provide revisions to inform the 2023 budget process. Finally, throughout the last 3 years, Algon County's budget process has been well served with the addition of a budget committee to support council and provide due diligence throughout the budget process. To ensure that 2023 budget deliberations are not delayed, it is recommended that the budget decisions be heard by the committee of the whole to support onboarding and orientation of new members of council. Given the effectiveness of the budget committee, it is staff's recommendation that council consider the reestablishment of the committee and that meetings begin again in the spring of 2023. In summary, the feedback shared through the 2023 budget survey indicates that there is a desire to keep taxes affordable and minimize future tax increases while recognizing the need for improved delivery of certain services or increased levels of other services. The information received through the budget survey will help to shape the 2023 budget and the future budgets as considerations from the survey are factored into the long-range plan. Staff await consideration of the report and the 6 questions that might be revised at this time. The recommendations are before you.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Are there any questions for Jennifer? Do you want us to go over the questions then, Jennifer, as a committee?
Yes, please. That would be wonderful. We can pull them out.
Could you guide us through those, Jennifer, one by one, and maybe we could just hear the questions and then we can think about it, and if there are changes, then we can make them.
Certainly. One at a time. So the first question that we had last year was, to what extent did your department take into consideration public input received through the survey? Is that still a question that the committee would like to have answered?
Committee, what do you think about that? Do you want that question to still stay on, or do you want to revise it? I think it's a fair question. I think it's something that we should include. What does the rest of the committee say? Go ahead, Councillor Tsiger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, maybe I'm wondering, would it be beneficial to tighten it a little bit, and instead of to what extent, which is fairly broad, to say which aspect. So let's assume that everybody will take the results into consideration and say, which aspect of the survey results did you take into consideration? And so to have staff point out, well, we know people wanted more efficiencies, or they want, so yeah, to pick out and demonstrate what they used. I think it could be useful, a little tighter.
Without a doubt, yep.
What does the rest of the committee think? We agree in agreement with Councillor Tsiger about that, or Councillor 𝗕𝗂𝗴𝗏𝗁, any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I don't have a problem with it. Again, it's all predicated on the statistical validity of the responses being received, and can you suggest that the less than 400 responses are representative of the desires across the county? I don't know, but still they're indicative of what is being thought out by there who do care to share some of their thoughts. So in that respect, it's valid, I think, to at least pay homage to it through the budget process for the department heads.
Okay, thank you, Councillor 𝗕𝗂𝗏𝗏. Have you got any thoughts about this, Deputy Warden Marks?
Well, I noticed that Central Elgin had the largest number of responses, so yeah, it is indicative, but I don't know how factual it is. I think I could say that outright. There may be a bit of emotion in there.
I think the thing is too, the one concern, and I think we've talked about this in the past, is the fact that a lot of these comments are not specifically Elgin County comments. They're specific to certain municipalities. So, what may be something that's of interest to someone in one municipality doesn't necessarily mean it's something else that's going on in a different municipality. And in a lot of cases has nothing to do with Elgin County per se. It's not something that we're doing. So, I mean, we all know that. I just don't know how we can get that across clearer to, our ratepayers. That's kind of a concern, but I know we talked about that last year as well. So are we okay with what Councillor Jiguer, her wording that she's using, or should we be changing it a bit more? What do you think, Councillor Jiguer? Are you satisfied with the wording that you come up with, or do you think there's something else we could add?
I just saw two hands up, so I'll defer
Mine was
to
about that as well.
Julie and Deputy Warden Marks.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I sometimes I don't see you. The screen shifts. So go ahead, Deputy Warden, and then Julie next.
Well, just a gentle comment, perhaps, that some of those comments, and not all the ones from Central Elgin, but some of the comments are extremely inaccurate. And that needs to be acknowledged. Because because it's written doesn't mean it's actually true. I wouldn't want to go down the path trying to convince people that, but I do think we need to acknowledge that all those comments are not accurate.
Right. And I couldn't agree more. Julie, did you have a comment? And then Councillor Jiguer?
Just a quick follow-up on Deputy Warden Marks's remark there. We did try to embed within the body of the report a summary that kept it at a high level of the themes that were consistent, either through survey responses or through the comments received. So we did provide a fulsome depiction of the survey results as an appendix, but tried to summarize them for that purpose so that they were most relevant to our needs. So if we, as an executive leadership team, were considering aspects of the survey results, it's likely that we'll stick to those summarized comments within the body of the report rather than the specifics.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Julie. And go ahead, Councillor Jiguer.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to add, is I would trust that staff would point out the themes that they're focusing on or that they've considered, as opposed to responding to specific comments, because there are some themes around efficiencies and costs, and I think it would be beneficial to use those and not try to respond to individual comments. I agree.
And Councillor 𝗕𝗂𝗏𝗂𝗁, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm still torn on how do we quantify or qualify how a department took into consideration the public input. Is it sufficient to ask and just to maintain that did your department take into consideration? Do we need to quantify to what extent? Does it reduce the effectiveness of it if we don't ask them, how did you take it into effect or consideration? But did you consider it? I think that's what people are after.
Yeah, if I may, Madam Chair, that I would say, yes, we get rid of to what extent, but I wouldn't go as far as saying, did you? Because now that's just a yes, no. So I would like to say which aspect of the responses did you? So it could be that one department will come back and say, well, we picked up on the need to improve efficiencies and we picked up on that theme, and therefore we considered that when drafting our budget. So
Go ahead, Councillor 𝗕𝗂𝗏𝗂𝗏.
Can we simplify it even further then? And how did your department take into consideration?
Sure.
Yeah. What does the committee think? That sounds good.
Sure.
Is that okay, Councillor Jiguer?
Yes.
Okay, because you're the one that made the suggestion, so I want to make sure you're comfortable with that. Okay, it sounds like we've come up with something that we all feel comfortable with. So Jennifer, the next question.
The second question from last year was, to what extent in planning for 2022, so this will be planning for 2023, did your department take into consideration or account for inflationary pressures?
Okay, everybody okay with that? Or have you got something you'd like to see different?
Same. Going to say the same thing. How did they do it?
Counselor Jiguer, I think you had your hand up as well.
Yeah, Madam Chair, thank you. I was almost thinking that this year it's almost redundant. Last year was kind of the first jump where we were really moving away from that usual 2%. And I think the budget committee needed clarity as to how far did you go? What did you put a 4% in, a 5% in?
Mhm.
I'm thinking this year, every department is having to take into account inflationary pressures. So I'm wondering if maybe that's a given, that I'm expecting almost every department to report on the impact of inflation and changes in the rate of inflation in their department.
Counselor 𝗕𝗂𝗂𝗴𝗲.
Yes, thank you. Question for Jennifer. What's the expectation, Jennifer, on inflationary impacts going in? Like I know the end of October, we're looking at somewhere anywhere between 6.9 and 8%. What's the thinking at the county?
Yeah, we have at the end, September to September showed 6.9%.
Right.
So we anticipate it will stay in around at the 7% mark. So
Right.
that's based on just the last few months, it's kind of stabilized. So that seems to be the spot where it's landing.
Thank you.
Scary.
Any further comments? So we just got to go ahead, Counselor Jiguer.
Yeah, so perhaps to Councillor 𝗕𝗂𝗴𝗏𝗁's point, it is, we could say, how did you take into consideration? So I don't know if everybody will be, I'm kind of hoping not everybody will use a 6.9%, because I don't know that all departments will be affected equally, but perhaps to share a bit of information of how inflation is impacting their department.
Mhm.
And the number varies a little bit. So maybe the how, back to Councillor 𝗕𝗂𝗏𝗏𝗁's suggestion.
Okay, are we good with that? What about you, Deputy Warden? Do you like that wording?
Yes, it's scary, but it's logical.
Yeah. Okay, does that give you clear direction then, Jennifer, for that question?
What question? What did you write down as far as?
How did your department
How?
account for inflationary pressures?
Okay, does that sound, how did your department account for inflationary pressures in this year?
Everyone's okay with that with the committee? I think we're on board with that one, Jennifer,
Okay.
the wording. So if you want to move to the next question.
Okay. To what extent have you considered offsets? In other words, what are you willing to give up?
Yeah.
I have a thought without getting too far out of committee members and your thoughts, but I wondered if this one offers an opportunity to combine this with kind of an interdepartmental approach. So more of a countywide approach to budgeting. So it's not just looking at a singular department, rather looking at more of a corporate approach. In addition to, I think, the need to look within departments for offsets. So what are you willing to give up? But also, you know, what's the give and take across departments that has happened, which I know a committee member has brought forward a number of times in the past. I think this is either it's its own question or can be combined in this regard.
What does the committee think? Councillor Jiguer, did you have a comment about that?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I like the idea of combining 3 and 5. And perhaps with I think last year was a bit more open-ended with the hope that everybody would provide some give, not just the take. Personally, I think that there is no choice this year. We can't, as a county, just take what we need because nobody can afford it. Everybody's having to give. I have to give in my home, I have to give in my, everybody's having to give. So this time I would like to insist on seeing what are you not doing? What are you going without? But to do it at a more collaborative, like county level with how departments came together and say, well, maybe we join our budget on this expense, or perhaps that's where the survey talked about economies of scale, that could be, within departments. So, yeah, so combine 3 and 5, but really demonstrate where there is a give on the part of staff and departments.
Okay, Councillor 𝗕𝗂𝗡𝗴𝗏, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with the sentiment on that, particularly, and I think we should always try to encourage synergy development between the departments and trying to find those kinds of efficiencies. The only difference in the wording, Councillor 𝗕𝗂𝗏, is I would say what we want rather than what they need. So you're suggesting what the needs were. Well, the needs are always going to be there, but what are the things that you can possibly find a way to do more efficiently so we can get the needs more identified and supplied? The wants are one of those things that would be nice to do, but I'm not sure we can do. I know it's a matter of semantics, but
Could it be also even being more specific, and is what are you, what will you not?
right, what's the trade-off?
Where are there trade-offs?
Mm-hmm.
So, because if we agreed that everyone in the community is having to give up something to accommodate for inflation and everything else. Yeah, so it's even outside of needs and wants, it's what will you not spend on this year?
Right, so basically what projects or whatever are you willing to give up, like, so that you can make the budget better, right? Because the thing is, I think something we've learned is some departments need more money than others. So there's that collaboration part. So when we specifically ask a certain department what they're willing to give up or what, whatever it is, the point is sometimes they may not be able to give up much because of the importance of that particular department and what they need. But maybe you can find more efficiencies in another department. So that's where that collaboration part comes in. You're still getting your numbers down. It just might not be each and every department. We have to be realistic that some departments may not be able to cut their budget as much as maybe another one. So I guess I'm trying to say the collaboration part to me is very important between departments. Deputy Warden, did you have a comment?
Well, I trust the new council with staff will make the right decisions, but I think if any message I heard, it must be communicated very clearly to the public why. And if we failed anywhere, obviously the public were not getting the messages. And it's a two-way street because they have to participate. But we need to get the message out why we're doing things. I believe that we generally make the right decisions. We fail to convey that to the public.
Councillor 𝗕𝗂𝗏?
So maybe the wording could be a little bit more positive in terms of not just be, what will you not do? It could be, what will you not do, or what will you do differently to accommodate, increased costs? And that could be where departments can come together and creatively say, well, we've come up with a new way of doing this that will cost less, or we've agreed to, continue, even though there may not be COVID restrictions, we'll continue to do a lot of Zoom meetings and keep cutting down on travel costs. So it could be doing things differently as well.
And you know what? It's been proven to us that things can be done differently. And we already know that because we're doing Zoom meetings and those sorts of things, we certainly are making a difference on the budget. It's evident already. So we've got to be optimistic and keep using the new technologies and anything that's available that is a cost-saving measure. That's my take on it. So Councillor 𝗕𝗂𝗏, are you comfortable then with combining 3 and 5, and maybe we just come up with, so we'll have 5 questions rather than 6? And Julie, did you happen to maybe figure out how word that so that
Yes.
it matches with what we've been talking about.
So the good news is the collaboration is well underway, and we've had our executive leadership team working on the budget over the past month. It started with a kickoff meeting where we relied on this framework moving forward. So I think we can count on that collaboration piece built into the question of what will you do differently to find efficiencies? And we will just naturally include some interdepartmental areas and opportunities within that slide as part of the presentation as well. So what will you do differently to find efficiencies is a question that I think is very impactful.
Mhm.
So I guess that we move on to, it'd be question 4, right, Jennifer?
Yes. Question 4 is, how are your department priorities linked back to the service delivery review recommendations?
Okay. Any comment from our committee? I think it's a good question.
Is it, so I get, my question maybe for staff would be, how far are we in the implementation of the recommendations? And so was this more part of last term council, or there's still things that need to be implemented? And so if it's still relevant for staff, I'm happy to leave it as is.
If I may, through you,
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Sure,
I do
go
think it
ahead.
is still relevant. So while the service delivery review was completed in 2019, it did include a number of short, medium, and long-term recommendations. So we have made great headway in completing some of the short-term recommendations. There are still some that are outstanding, and we haven't yet taken a close look or started working on medium-term or long-term recommendations, to which I think there is still great value. So that is one I suggest stay in.
Okay, that sounds good. Everybody okay with that?
Mhm.
All right, and then I believe it's question 6, Jennifer.
Can I just jump in, Madam Chair, with one more
Certainly.
thought? Typically, when thinking about budgets, it's important to link back to whatever corporate planning documents exist within an organization. So we know that we've extensively leveraged the service delivery review. We also recognize that with a new term of council, there will probably partway through the year be a new strategic plan. But while we undertake the work to deliberate the 2023 budget, there is a strategic plan that is in place. And so I think it's important to link budget and priorities back to a corporate plan that provides such leadership to our staff as the strategic plan. So maybe an independent standalone question, similar to service delivery review, but linking back to the strat plan.
Okay, what does the committee think? It sounds good. Everybody
Yeah.
like that idea?
You could almost keep it as one question, but mention the 2 documents. So how are your departmental priorities linked back to service delivery review, strategic plan,
And other corporate planning
other
documents.
existing corporate departmental plan?
Mhm.
So just under one question?
Okay, that sounds good. Everybody's okay with that? So, so number 6 is a totally different kind of a question. I don't know. What do we think about that one? Any comments? Julie?
I have a comment through you, Madam Chair. If I could be completely honest, I think it's aggressive right now. And I think, it could follow perhaps some preliminary budget discussions at the direction of the incoming council. I think we are very highly aware of inflationary pressures. We are already undertaking conversations of where we can find savings, trying to get that number as low as we possibly can. I think it's a difficult question for staff to manage at this point.
And I'm probably agreeing with that because things have changed. When we were talking about that question last year, it was a different time. And now we're moving into something different with a new council as well. So what does the committee think? Do we just not have that question this time? We take it off the list? Councillor 𝗕𝗂𝗴𝗴𝗁, are you okay with removing that question from the list? What
It's
about you?
implied between questions 3 and 5 that are, combined that you're looking for these efficiencies. And I think this is perhaps meant as an incentive at the tail end here that if should council come back to you and say, hey, you got to drop this, what? And maybe there's some gives staff some forward thinking in terms of what they can do without. But I think a department head would always be or have that in the back of their heads anyway, thinking that if we don't get our wish list, we're going to have to come up with something different. So I can live with it, or I can let it go. I suspect that council will probably come back and ask the question.
Okay, Councillor Jiguer?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I would agree. I can live without it. Because I don't know if even last year if it generated, meaningful discussions, because I think we were then faced with impossible choices. Well, I can cut 5%, but then you're not going to have this. I'm like, okay, well, that's not a meaningful discussion. So it may not have achieved the outcome that we wanted. So to me, as long as the new combined 3 and 5 really convey to the public that recognition of the capacity or lack thereof to pay by our ratepayers. It's not a bottomless pit that we can go to, that if our costs increase, then we just turn to our ratepayers and ask for more. It can't be that way. So that spirit really comes across, that there is, and it doesn't have to be in a austerity, it can be just in the spirit of community. But we're all going to give and take in order to maintain services, but respect each other. So to me, I'll give up 6 if that spirit comes through in 3 and 5.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like we're pretty well all on board with that then. Deputy Warden Marks, did you have any further remarks about this?
No.
Okay.
I just, if I may, Madam Chair, just build upon Councillor Jiguer's point of how well that question worked last year. I know that we're essentially taking it off the table, but I don't think it should be lost altogether, because while I think its usefulness is limited when considering just departments on their own, I think the question and quantifying what that percentage is moving forward is best considered corporate wide. So that's what I'm proposing come later, is kind of a direct question like that is helpful when considering a corporate wide budget. But we did find that certain departments that are small and already very lean with no additional services or no discretionary areas to cut, we didn't get much value out of that question when considering it in isolation. So we will certainly recognize and ensure that our executive leadership team really recognizes the pressures on our constituents and builds that into the new combined question 3 and 5. So great feedback. Thank you.
Okay, so Jennifer and Julie, you're okay then? You feel confident that these are the right questions? So is there anything further to discuss in this particular agenda item? Is there anything else we want to discuss? Go ahead, Julie.
Thanks. There is an approach embedded in this report whereby staff are recommending, because of it is a transition year, that budget committee activities be administered through committee of the whole rather than having dedicated budget committee. And so that would be a recommendation that we carry forward to the new council from this budget committee, is that we'd like to streamline the process as much as possible so as to not have to duplicate presentations, and also to aid in the orientation and onboarding of any new council members. So we were just seeking the budget committee's input on that recommendation in particular, because from a staff perspective and an executive leadership team's perspective, we saw and realized great benefits from having a dedicated budget committee. So not something we'd hope to walk away from permanently, but walk away from until the spring of 2023.
Okay, thank you, Julie. Committee members, what do you think about that? Go ahead, Councillor 𝗕𝗂𝗂𝗧𝗧.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A question through you to staff. Is there any concerns from a senior management point of view of any lost pricing efficiencies that may be achieved because we're delaying some of the budget process? For example, we could not do in Bayham the entire capital budget in principle, which we usually do in October, but we did consider certain high priority items to get them on the table for early pricing. Is there something like that that needs to be considered, from a senior management point of view? Is there something that's urgent that really needs to be dealt with sooner rather than later, so we don't put the entire basket off down the road?
Yes, and this was definitely part of our consideration and why we didn't want to have a budget committee independent from committee of the whole. So we have drafted a fairly aggressive council schedule to consider the budget so as to keep us on the same timeline as we've had in previous years. So more intensive orientation along with budget considerations and some special meetings associated with just considering the budget. But high priority items, I think, would just be brought forward as standalone considerations for council outside of the regular budget deliberation process if they were truly urgent. But we are optimistic that should the incoming council consent to the draft budget schedule that we'll be presenting to them on December 7th, that we'll be able to still achieve the same tender timelines as we've achieved in previous years. So we did carefully consider that and hope that we wouldn't have too many one-off high priority requests for council.
Okay. Any further questions or comments about any of this? Because there's quite a bit to talk about in this particular item. Okay, if we don't have any further questions or comments about this agenda item, Jenna, could you read the recommendation, please?
Sure. Be it resolved that the report titled 2023 Budget Survey Results from the Director of Financial Services / Treasurer dated October 25th, 2022 be received and filed for information, and that the committee recommend to the 2022-2026 term of County Council that the composition of the 2023 Budget Committee be comprised of Committee of the Whole to avoid delays and to ensure all councillors are involved in budget discussions.
Okay, thank you, Jenna. I need someone to move and someone to second.
Just a question, Madam Chair. Do
Okay.
you need to recognize did you mention already the questions that we changed the question? Do you need that? No.
No, yeah, we made careful notes, so
Yeah.
we'll.
Okay. So I'm happy to move that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor 𝗕𝗂𝗂𝗧𝗧, and someone to second it. Deputy Warden Marks, and all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. All right, the next item up is 2023 budget risks and opportunities. And I'll turn it back over to you, Jennifer, please.
Thank you, Madam Warden, through you to members of Budget Committee. The budget discussions at the executive leadership team level have identified significant risks and opportunities that impact the areas of business within the county's portfolio. The main risk factor relates to the higher than normal inflation rate due to the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic that not only impact the county, but every person and every industry at this time. Supply chain shortages due to shutdowns have caused rising costs for products and extended timelines for product delivery. For instance, the computer chip crisis has caused ambulance vehicle delivery delays for county operations, and we now rely on some aging equipment to continue to deliver this essential service. The CPI rate year over year at the end of September was 6.9%, when for many years it remained in the area of 2%. Some of our contracts are based on the CPI rate year over year for October, which we expect to remain in the neighborhood of 7%. The effects of these unusual inflationary increases are beyond our immediate control. However, we do already anticipate an inflationary factor as a measure of increase built into our short-term and long-term planning. As a placeholder and where necessary within the budget, the county has built in historical amounts of CPI at 2%. Therefore, in this fiscal year, if we were required to match inflation, we would need to add approximately 5% to both capital and operating budgets. An increase of that amount would add approximately 5.5 million to the 2023 budget and would then need to be rolled out to future years as a necessary increase to the base. The second area of risk for 2023 is evidenced in the performance of Q3 as it relates to wages and benefits performance being positive and negative in many areas of the county. We have significant overtime in the homes due to staffing shortages and positive performance for positions that we cannot replace in other areas due to our inability to find qualified staff to fill specific service area needs. The loss of productivity and knowledge base when staff leave is not quantifiable, but it is felt by those left to complete the necessary tasks. The Ministry of Health has provided additional funding for education for PSWs and to support direct care to residents to ensure quality and quantity of care across the long-term care sector. We are meeting targets and deadlines in all sectors, but rely on dedicated staff who are not able to utilize vacation time and time off. We are incurring a great deal of overtime and increased purchase services due to staff availability levels, which is increasing costs. These situations are not sustainable solutions and lead to overall staff dissatisfaction. Over the next 3 years, the newly announced additional funding from the Ministry of Health for the homes will provide offset to the 5.6 million in taxes now collected to support the high level of care provided to our residents. Taxation will be able to be reallocated to other areas of the business as this funding is received. In 2023, this eligible amount, along with the potential increases in other areas is expected to equate to approximately $2 million in additional revenue. The area of technology and software is identified as both a risk and an opportunity from a county business perspective. In April of 2022, the county experienced a cybersecurity incident that resulted in a significant disruption of our operations and services within the county. The incident brought to light our reliance on on-premise applications rather than cloud-based applications. On-premise applications rely heavily on in-house services and server maintenance. During the outage, these applications could only be accessed in-house and were more vulnerable to security breaches. Alternatively, the cloud-based applications include enhanced security and were more accessible through external sources, not necessarily linked to county resources. The county's website is also an on-premise solution, which restricted our ability to communicate directly with the public over a 45-day period. Temporary workarounds were implemented to enable us to continue operations while ensuring data remained secure during this time. Cloud-based solutions, while more expensive and subscription-based, offer the security and flexibility that is needed to ensure uninterrupted service delivery. Some of the opportunities by switching to cloud-based solutions include offer a more secure and reliable option from a risk perspective, less need for servers and data storage due to cloud-based storage, accessibility by internet or external internet or by other virtual means, can offer more functionality than current software with an eye to more efficient delivery of information and service, including mobile devices, training videos, etc. Improved efficiency, less risk of service disruption for critical functions, such as the long-term care homes and payroll, modernization approach to information technology services. Areas of risk include a more expensive option than in-house solutions, but with some offsets related to savings on hardware needs and maintenance of in-house software. Products offer less customization, which may require funds to support enhanced development. Integration between software applications may be more difficult and less flexible depending on what is required. It may also require funds to support development, and implementation and changeover can be temporarily disrupted and may result in additional work at the onset of implementation. Staff have provided a chart with the expected costs and savings that we have discussed for reference purposes as we embark upon what is expected to be a very challenging budget process for 2023 and beyond. In the chart, we've referenced percentage of tax increase, but I just want to clarify that that should be percentage of levy increase.
Yeah.
At this time, I'm happy to answer questions that you may have at this time.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Are there any questions for Jennifer from the committee? Go ahead, Councillor Jiguer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I guess my question to staff is, so what is the plan? So we clarified at the beginning, we had a plan of a 5.6 year to year. So am I interpreting this as it could be 7.9 instead of 5.6?
The potential is there, yes, and this is what staff will be looking to mitigate some of these costs and
Okay.
see where we can have savings in other areas. But just on the onset, this is where we are.
Right.
Starting point.
Right.
We do have 2% in the budget, so just getting to that 7%. Well, we would have to increase it by another 5%.
And if I may, Madam Chair, if I recall, I think some departments had told us that there was not even a 2% in many lines, like over the 10 years. Am I remembering this?
Yes, we try to budget. There's several line items that we try to remain the same every year. A lot of those are travel development. We try to stay within those budgets, but there's some areas like purchase services where we just can't maintain that level. Other areas, utilities, and just off the top of my head, office supplies. Some of those areas, I mean, we can try to do more with less throughout the budget, but there are some lines that are just not containable year to year. So
if I may, one more follow-up. So will the approach then be zero base with an understanding that there was some support for a year to year 5.6 with now council's awareness, or at least the committee's awareness that the pressure is really more like 7.9. But so what is that the direction that staff will take to budgeting is kind of like, are you shooting for a specific target to 5.6 or you trying to be below 7.9? Like what are you using as a starting point, or are you using a zero base?
I mean, we usually begin with zero base and then add to, so we know that we have a starting point for 23.
Right.
That would be like our target. And then whatever you're adding to it is an extra ask.
Right.
It would be to offset that with something that's already in there. Potentially moving projects ahead of out into future years when we think we could maybe accomplish them at a lower cost. Hopefully the inflationary costs go down, but I'm not able to predict the future, so that would be great if I could.
Yeah.
And I have heard like some of the experts are saying that in a couple of years we'll be back to like 4, 3, somewhere in that neighborhood. So there is potential there for a wait and see, but that will be all through the discussions with executive leadership. What can wait, what can't wait.
And so to very directly answer your question, we're not using a number as a target at this point in time. It's still very much in the development phase. So we are truly assessing and auditing what our needs are, leveraging a zero-based budget approach and trying to contain any increases as much as possible.
So this is an awareness piece of what we're facing. And then, okay, I appreciate that.
And if I may, through you, Madam Chair, this really just captures what were the highest level of what was a 2-hour-long discussion about all of the risks and opportunities for our executive leadership team. So we tried to kind of include pillars, I would say, or the biggest areas of risk. And but the discussion was very fulsome, and we're all trying to remain as positive as we can with what's looking like it's going to be a difficult budget year ahead of us. So we're having critical discussions and conversations, and eventually we may get to a point where we are targeting a number, hoping that number comes from the direction of council. But at this point, we still have a lot of heavy lifting to do before we get there.
Any further comments? I just have a comment too about the fact that we're not the only ones in this boat. I've talked to several other wardens and they're all really worried because, I mean, the CPI is so high. And when you look at the numbers here that projects, it could be 5.5 million impact. That's huge. Like as hard as the staff are working to get those numbers down, and I mean, we're all doing our job, trying to look at these numbers as well. It's just almost overwhelming. And we're not the only ones. I know that's not much help or comfort to us, but still, it's going to be tough for everyone. Councillor 𝗕𝗂𝗴𝗏, did you have any comments?
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right. Are there any further comments or questions concerning this particular agenda item? Okay, Jenna, could you please read the recommendation?
Be it resolved that the report titled 2023 Budget Risks and Opportunities from the Director of Financial Services / Treasurer dated October 25th, 2022 be received and filed for information.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor 𝗕𝗂𝗏 and seconded by Councillor Jaguar. Are there any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And the next item up is 2022 to 2031 10-year budget plan overview. So I'll turn this over to you again, Jennifer, please.
Thank you, Madam Warden, for you to the Budget Committee. To begin the 2023 budget process, staff offer a review of the starting point of the 10-year net income and capital plans and an outline of the methodology that encompasses the process to capture costs for this purpose. Appendix 1 represents the current and proposed net income plans and is the operational plan for the county. Municipalities must fund this plan in full by year end and cannot borrow long-term to fund any portion of the operational side of their plan. Municipalities must also fund their capital plans, and this is done in part through the net income plan as well. Within the net income plan is amortization, which are funds that are used to support the capital plan. Additionally, there is funding from OSIF and CCB, which was formerly the federal gas tax, that also relate to the capital plan. As previously mentioned, line items within the operational plan are linked to the October over October CPI, such as the road maintenance agreement with our local municipal partners, and are increased when the CPI is known, usually by mid-November. Other line items have been incrementally increased if subjected to cost increases as is necessary, such as utility costs and wages and benefits. Offsetting lines that do not have increases remain untouched and help to contain costs and drive efficiencies within departmental budgets. Appendix 2 outlines the 10-year capital plan as last approved in principle by council. Last year, the Budget Committee considered many options related to the capital plan in an effort to mitigate cost increases while considering the onset of rising inflation. These increases were mainly contained within the transportation area of the capital plan and added 24 million to the 10-year capital plan. The committee felt that the solution landed upon was a good compromise by adding incremental inflation and moving or deleting assets to allow time to secure partnerships, agreements, and funding. This year, additional funding would need to be added to accommodate subsequent additional inflation in order to maintain the plan as presented. Traditionally, we do not complete all capital projects within the year that it is started. We therefore provide a closed and carry forward report after year end as an update on what was completed and what will be carried forward into the new budget year. When capital items are closed, they are put into service and amortization begins. Otherwise, they are carried forward into the next fiscal year in order to enable completion. From year to year, these values do vary. Currently, one of our major ongoing projects is 𝗕𝘂𝗱𝗴𝗏 Lodge in the amount of 35.6 million. The county has secured long-term financing for this project in the amount of $27 million. The interest rate will be set when the final debenture is taken out. It is expected that the debt will be repaid over 25 years, which will enable it to match the funding that we will receive from the Ministry of Health for the purposes of this project. There will be a component of tax that will also be required to repay this debt. By normalizing the payment, we can count on a smooth value that would be required each fiscal year. Information related to the 10-year plan has been provided for the committee as a starting point for the 2023 budget and to provide a review of methodology used to create the 10-year plan. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have at this time.
Thank you, Jennifer. Are there any questions for Jennifer? Okay, I don't see any hands up. I guess if you could read the recommendation then, please, Jenna.
Sure. Be it resolved that the report titled 2022 to 2031 10-year budget plan overview from the Director of Financial Services / Treasurer dated October 26, 2022 be received and filed for information.
Okay, thank you. Someone to move and someone to second, please. Deputy Warden Marks and seconded by Councillor 𝗕𝗂𝗂𝗏𝗏. Are there any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. I don't believe there's any other business today. There is no correspondence and the date of the next meeting is to be determined. So our next item up is Jenna, if you could read adjournment, please.
Sure. Be it resolved that we do now adjourn at 2:02 p.m. to meet again at the call of the chair.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Deputy Warden Marks and seconded by Councillor 𝗕𝗂𝗧𝗏𝗏. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.